In the near future, eugenics, genetic selection, dominates society, and most people are designed to be perfect in laboratories. Everyone is registered in a genetic database, and those created in the laboratory are classified as valids, while those born naturally are called invalids, because they are prone to genetic diseases, ranging from real illnesses to baldness. Although genetic discrimination is theoretically illegal, employers still conduct urine tests or even saliva tests on the envelopes of resumes, leading to genetic classification. This means that invalids are always pushed into low-level jobs. In his apartment, Vincent spends a lot of time shaving and showering until his body is completely clean. Then, he burns off any hair and dead skin cells that might fall out. Next, he takes a bag of urine from the fridge and attaches it to his genitals to fake it as his own urine. He also drops a bit of blood onto a fake fingertip, carefully attaching it to his real finger. Afterward, Vincent goes to work at the 𝒢𝒶𝓉𝓶 Aerospace Corporation. Every employee must prick their finger to verify their identity before being allowed entry. Vincent lets the scanner take blood from his fake fingertip. Then, he sits at his desk and works on spaceflight plans on the computer. Occasionally, he wipes away any DNA traces from the keyboard with a small device. The mission director stops by and expresses respect for Vincent's cleanliness, confirming that he has been selected for the flight to Titan, Saturn's moon, in a week. After the man leaves, Vincent secretly opens a jar and sprinkles some hair, skin, and nails around his workspace. Next, Vincent places a strand of hair on the comb he keeps in his desk drawer. He is subjected to a drug test to ensure he is clean before the flight. Using the concealed bag of urine, he hands the sample to the doctor, and when the doctor tests it, the result shows his name is Jerome, and he is valid. After work, Vincent goes to watch another spacecraft launch from Earth, and his colleague Irene comes to congratulate him on being selected for the flight. She also points out that he is the only employee who watches every rocket launch every day. A flashback begins, telling the story of Vincent's early life. His parents had a brief fling on the beach, and his mother accidentally got pregnant, so Vincent was born naturally, which was very rare at the time. As soon as the doctor took him from his mother's hands, they took a blood sample and concluded that he was at risk of many diseases, so his life expectancy was only about 30 years. Vincent's childhood was difficult, as even the smallest things like a runny nose or a minor scratch were seen by his mother as deadly threats. No school would accept Vincent as a student because insurance didn't cover the risks posed by his bad genes. Eventually, his parents decided to have another child, and this time they went to a genetic lab to do everything by the book. Anton, the second child, had no issues and happily spent time with his older brother. But Vincent realized that his parents had a favorite child. Whenever their parents weren't looking, the two brothers often played the chicken game in the sea, meaning they would see who could swim the furthest from the shore before getting scared and turning back. Anton always won this competition, which only added to Vincent's feelings of inferiority. As Vincent grew up, he developed a passion for space and dreamed of becoming an astronaut. His parents warned him that no one would hire him because of his bad genes, but he didn't listen and went for a few interviews. To his disappointment, no one hired him, just as his parents had predicted. One afternoon, the two brothers went swimming again, and what amazed Anton was that this time Vincent won. In fact, Vincent had to turn back to help Anton, who was exhausted, swim back to shore. That was the last time they swam together, as that evening, Vincent left his family home to pursue his dream. Eventually, Vincent found a job at 𝒢𝒶𝓉𝓶 as a janitor. While cleaning the office, he would sometimes use the computer when no one was looking and watch the daily rocket launches. He also learned about the daily blood tests done on the same finger and secretly stole a small sensor that had fallen off a machine. Vincent never gave up on his dream, even though his cleaning supervisor always mocked him for it. At his apartment, Vincent never stopped training, despite the harm it could cause to his body. Desperate from the lack of progress, he finally decided to contact someone in the black market, who introduced him to the real Jerome, a former swimming star with an excellent IQ and perfect health, except for his legs. Jerome had been paralyzed after being hit by a car and had to use a wheelchair. The accident occurred overseas and was not recorded, so no one knew that Jerome had become an invalid. Vincent paid both men to acquire Jerome's identity and began a lengthy transformation process. He wore contact lenses to replace his glasses and changed his eye color to match Jerome's. His hair was also cut and styled like Jerome's in his ID photo. Photos were no longer an issue, as no one paid attention to them. Everything depended on DNA. The last problem was that Jerome was taller than Vincent, which meant Vincent had to undergo a painful procedure to lengthen his legs so that his height would match Jerome's. Vincent moved into Jerome's apartment to have his address as well, and in the early days, he had to rest to recover from the surgery, which left him in constant pain. During those days, Vincent learned how to sign Jerome's name and write with his left hand. Meanwhile, Jerome continued to fill up his urine and blood bags. One day, Jerome showed Vincent his silver medal to remind him that he had a lot to live up to. Jerome also told Vincent to call him by his middle name, Eugene, so Vincent could get used to being called Jerome. On the day of the interview, Vincent brought his urine bag and tested it on the machine, only to get an error message because the urine contained alcohol. Vincent began to scold Jerome for the consequences of his addiction. After testing several bags, Vincent finally found a clean one and took it with him. At the office, the doctor tested the urine sample, and the machine confirmed Vincent was Jerome, a valid. As a result, Vincent didn't have to attend a formal interview. He was immediately hired due to his IQ. From that point on, Vincent had to clean his body every day to remove dead skin, nails, and hair, all of which were burned in the crematorium. All of his clothes were kept in sealed bags to avoid contamination while working. Vincent would scatter Jerome's samples on the desk to maintain the facade and use a fake finger containing Jerome's blood to pass the identity check at the door. No one suspected anything. Back in the present, everyone at Gattaca was in panic because the company's manager had been killed, and while Jerome was looking at the gruesome scene, he accidentally let a hair fall without noticing. The police quickly arrived to collect all DNA traces from the crime scene, including the hair. The boss asked Irene to assist the police in any way needed. The mission hadn't been cancelled, and Vincent was still set to fly into space. When he shared the news with Jerome, they decided to go out and celebrate. They drank heavily and even performed some tricks with smoke in their glasses. At the office, Irene took a hair from Vincent's drawer and sent it for testing at a connection service, where they ran a few tests and concluded that Vincent was quite an ideal subject. At the end of the night, Jerome was so drunk that Vincent had to help him into bed. Suddenly, Jerome confessed that he wasn't drunk during the car accident, and it wasn't an accident. He had actually tried to end his own life. The next morning, the police forensics department examined all the samples and discovered that a mysterious invalid had been present at Gattaca, making him the prime suspect. Back with Vincent, he placed the small sensor he had stolen while cleaning at Gattaca onto Jerome's chest to record his heart rate for 20 minutes. Jerome then spun the wheels of his wheelchair with extreme force to simulate exercising. Later, at Gattaca, Vincent was subjected to a running test, and he switched the sensor at the office with the one he had brought from home. Meanwhile, detectives were investigating the invalid record from the hair and found that it belonged to a janitor who had gone missing a few years ago. They went to the office to ask a few questions, and Vincent eavesdropped on their conversation, making him feel anxious. To make matters worse, the 20-minute recording quickly ended, and Vincent's real heart rate appeared, with a rather high reading. He immediately ran into the locker room and collapsed, trying to catch his breath. After work, Irene met with Vincent and confessed that she had read his DNA sequence, but it actually belonged to Jerome. She was very impressed by his perfection and felt inferior, admitting that she was a lab baby, but she was still at risk of heart failure, meaning she would never be allowed to participate in a mission. When Vincent said he saw nothing wrong with her, Irene gave him a lock of her hair and encouraged him to test it to discover her genetic flaws. But Vincent threw it away and said it was because of the wind. A little while later, while Vincent was working on the computer, suddenly all employees received the file of the invalid, from the hair, as he was the prime suspect. Luckily, no one recognized Vincent, but he still felt anxious. When he got home, he told Jerome that he was the main suspect and began disposing of all the blood and urine bags. Jerome immediately stopped him, reminding him that they would never look at Vincent and see an invalid. That night, Vincent decided to go out because if he changed his routine, it would raise suspicion. When Jerome looked out the window, he saw Irene picking up Vincent. A little while later, Vincent and Irene were attending a piano concert, their first date. After the concert, the pianist threw a glove into the audience, and Vincent noticed that he had 12 fingers. Irene explained that such a complex piece of music could only be played by hands like that. Meanwhile, detectives were arresting a number of invalids in the area to find the murderer. However, it was clear that none of them had DNA matching the hair sample. They decided to investigate all the buildings around Gattaca and came to Jerome's apartment. Therefore, Jerome also had to undergo a blood test. The detectives were surprised to see a wheelchair-bound person working at Gattaca. Jerome pretended to be angry, shouting that he had just been injured during training and accusing the detectives of discrimination. Not wanting to cause trouble, the detectives left. At Gattaca, some police officers took all the trash bags away. On their way home, Irene and Vincent discovered that the road was blocked by the police as they were checking people in the area. Vincent immediately removed his contact lenses and avoided the saliva test by saying he had been drinking. The police instead took his blood sample, and his fake finger fooled them as usual. After passing the test, Irene announced that she wanted to show Vincent something and stopped the car a few miles away. She quickly crossed the road, dodging the oncoming cars, but Vincent hesitated because he couldn't see clearly without his contact lenses. After much doubt, he decided to run across and luckily avoided a collision. Later, Irene took Vincent to watch the sunrise at the solar panel center, where the beautiful light effects were somewhat blurry for Vincent. As they stepped outside, Irene noticed that Vincent's eyes looked different, and he explained it was due to the light shining on them. Sometime later, the detectives discovered that a cup in the office trash had DNA matching the hair sample. They speculated that the invalid might have been working undercover and killed the manager because he discovered the truth. To be sure, they went to 𝒢𝒶𝓉𝒶𝒸𝒶 and announced they would take blood samples directly from the vein rather than the finger. When it was Vincent's turn, he pretended that the doctor had hurt him with the needle and jumped out of the chair, quickly swapping his blood sample with Jerome's. The detectives performed the test again, but found no matching results. That evening, Vincent and Irene went on their second date. Their sweet dance was interrupted when the police began collecting all items with DNA, like napkins and cigarette butts. They wanted to test everyone again, so Vincent immediately escaped with Irene through the back door. One police officer tried to stop them, but Vincent quickly lunged at him, knocking him unconscious. As Irene, terrified, called him crazy, Vincent dragged her through the dark alleys to escape. When the other officers discovered their unconscious colleague on the ground, they began searching for the couple hiding in an alley. A detective shouted Vincent's name, and Irene asked who that was, but Vincent responded by kissing her. A while later, the couple was at Irene's apartment, spending their first morning together. Vincent noticed a strand of hair on the pillow and rushed to the beach, rubbing sand and stones on his skin to remove any dead cells. When he returned, Irene asked about the scars on his legs, and Vincent explained they were from a car accident. Meanwhile, the detectives were comparing Jerome's records with Vincent's and decided they needed to investigate further. They returned to 𝒢𝒶𝓉𝒶𝒸𝒶 and took the keys from Vincent's keyboard while questioning why he still used the name Jerome. Irene overheard and immediately warned Vincent, telling him that he looked sick and should go home. Vincent understood she was using a code and left the building. Meanwhile, Irene tells the detective that Vincent went home because he was sick. However, the detective didn't stop and asked Irene to lead him to Jerome's house. At the same time, Vincent called Jerome and told him to be himself because the police were coming. Jerome had to leave his wheelchair and began to climb the stairs to the main floor, slowly dragging his legs. It took some time, but he made it to the doorbell just in time to let Irene and the detective in. Then, Jerome pulled himself onto a chair and adjusted his legs to appear natural. When the couple entered, Jerome pretended and asked Irene for a kiss, which she gave him to maintain the lie. The detective took a blood sample and was disappointed to find that it was indeed Jerome, and then he tried to go downstairs to where Vincent and the lab were hiding. However, just then, he received a call from his colleague, informing him that they had caught the murderer, so the detective left. Afterward, Vincent stepped outside, and Irene saw him next to Jerome, both calling each other by that name. She hurriedly walked away, but Vincent chased after her, explaining his situation and swearing that he hadn't killed anyone. Irene remained worried and left. At the police station, it was discovered that the director's saliva had been found in the victim's eyes, confirming that he was the murderer. It turned out that the director had been threatened with the cancellation of the flight to Titan, so he killed the person to fulfill his own dream. Some time later, Vincent returned to his desk and found the detective there. Unexpectedly, the detective revealed a big secret. He was Anton, Vincent's younger brother. They didn't recognize each other immediately because it had been 13 years since they had last seen each other, but Anton had been connecting the dots throughout the investigation. Anton accused Vincent of cheating and wanted to arrest him, leading to an argument. Vincent believed Anton wanted to see him fail and reminded him of the winner in their previous race, which made Anton challenge him again. That night, when the two brothers arrived at the beach, they quickly dove into the water and swam so far that they lost sight of the shore. Anton worried that they were pushing their limits, but Vincent called him a coward, so they continued swimming. However, Anton began to feel tired and brought it up again. Finally, Vincent revealed how he managed to do it. He never saved energy for the return trip. Frustrated, Anton turned back but started drowning. Vincent turned back, pulled him, and swam to shore. A few hours later, Vincent visited Irene and gave her a strand of his hair. However, Irene threw it away, saying the wind did it. They spent the night together at her house as a farewell, as Vincent would be leaving for a year-long mission. The next morning, Vincent returned to his apartment and found the laboratory wrapped in plastic. Jerome revealed that he had prepared enough samples to last 2 lifetimes. This statement implied that he would no longer be there when Vincent returned. When Vincent asked him where he was going, Jerome simply replied that he was also going on a journey. Jerome also gave Vincent a card and told him not to open it until he was in space. After that, Vincent went to 𝒢𝒶𝓉𝒶𝒶 to prepare for his mission. The doctor announced that there was a change in policy, so a new urine sample was required. Caught off guard, Vincent had not brought Jerome's urine bag, so he began urinating into the cup while regretting his dream. However, the doctor revealed that he had known for a long time and stayed silent because he also had a child who was an invalid and believed the child deserved something better. The testing machine produced an incorrect record, but the doctor changed it to Jerome's and allowed Vincent to pass. Before Vincent left, the doctor informed him that he had known all along, as Vincent always used his left hand when holding himself in the apartment. Jerome took his silver medal and stepped into the incinerator, bringing everything to an end for himself. At the same time, Vincent boarded the spacecraft and departed from the planet. When Vincent was far enough out in space, he opened Jerome's card and discovered a large bundle of his hair inside. Now, Vincent had truly set foot in space as well. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications to see more videos like this. You can search for the movie, 𝒢𝒶𝓉𝓶, to watch the full episode. Thank you for watching.